when adversity strikes and you have to shift to something new, I mean, it takes deep work. It takes a lot of intense self-reflection. It doesn't mean life is over. It means you have to pivot.
Have you ever felt like staying healthy means being perfect, pushing harder, or following yet another unsustainable plan? What if joy was the missing ingredient? Today's guest, Janet Omstead, is a board-certified behavior change coach, international speaker, and author of The Playbook, How to Get in the Habit of Good Health. Known as Canada's play expert, Janet helps women over 50 trade burnout and restriction for something revolutionary, the science of play. Her mission began at age 24, after a near-death health crisis showed her firsthand that being fit saved her life. Since then, she's been obsessed with helping others build real vitality, not through punishment or perfectionism, but through simple, sustainable, playful habits. She's been featured in the Globe and Mail, CTV, and CBC News. Her message is powerful and personal. You don't have to work out, you get to play. Please welcome Janet Omstead. Hi, Janet, and thanks for joining us today. I'm so happy you're here. You know, you and I have known each other for a long, long time, and I'm so glad that you can join us. You have a pretty unique way of being a personal trainer and a health coach. So maybe just start there, like kind of a little bit what got you into it, what motivates you, and how did you reach this, I would think, a pretty special mindset about working with people?
Well, first of all, thanks for having me. It's a real honor to be here, and I feel so lucky that I can help educate your listeners and have such a great conversation together. Well, that's a great question. So my lens is very unique because, well, let's just start. When I was 24 years old, the night of my bachelorette party, I suffered a ruptured ovarian cyst, and I was bleeding internally, and I didn't know that. And my friends all were really worried about me. And I actually, wasn't going to do anything about it. I just thought the pain would go away. I could ignore it and everything would be fine, except my body wasn't playing along anymore. So they drove me 2 hours to the hospital to have life-saving emergency surgery. So if they hadn't have driven me to the hospital, I wouldn't have lived. I wouldn't have been able to walk down the aisle. And that moment really changed how I saw health. And decided, your body talks to you. And it was a wake-up call that has changed how I live. And it changed how I get to help people, because I decided to devote my time and energy into helping people rediscover their health on their terms in a way that works for them. And so I became a personal trainer in 2001. I went through tons of different types of training. I became a board-certified behavior change health coach. So I really work with the psychology of change and how to help people at a much deeper level. Because I found as a trainer, I could write all the best programs in the world and I had the best intentions. But if someone wasn't ready, willing, and able to change in a way that made sense to them, it didn't really matter. So, and while I was going through my training, I recognized that there was a problem, because every year as I recertified, in the news, I heard, the inactivity is growing globally. 1.8 billion people in the world don't do enough physical activity to keep healthy. And I was like, wait a minute, there's a problem here. We know how fundamental good health is, or practicing the habits to keep us in good health. Yet, the average person, 1 in 3 women and 1 in 4 men don't do enough physical activity to keep healthy. And I was like, wow, I got to do something about that. And I thought, what habit really could change someone's life the way I got to experience getting to live? And I thought, well, exercise. I mean, obviously, doesn't everybody like to exercise? Well, no. Well, how can we help people at a broader level, greater level? And I thought, well, what if we reframe exercise as play? That just felt like a pretty normal thing for me, because I've always loved to play. It's been a big part of how I grew up. It's how I live every day, because I got to live. And then I just started, really investigating, researching finding out if anybody had written about play as exercise, and there had been nothing out there. There's lots of diet and exercise books, but there was nothing out there helping someone go through what it takes to establish a habit of play or exercise so that they're, going to show up and do it again and again and again and improve their health. And then when you play more, you feel better, you eat better, you sleep better, you manage stress better. Your whole life, you get more connected. It's joyful and fun. And I think we all deserve that as we live.
Oh, for sure. What a story that you come to that, this conversation with that background. We have a unique patient population that you're aware of, that there's a lot of exercise restrictions. You have a personal story too, and a connection with cardiac issues. Can you, share with us what your experience has been in that area?
Yeah, my grandfather, so my dad's dad, had an aortic aneurysm and didn't know it, and dropped dead at 61 years old, much to the surprise of everybody at the time. And that was 1961. And my father didn't really think it had anything to do with him. And he was a float plane pilot. It was his hobby. So he had to have medicals every year, specific medicals for being a pilot. And around when he was 70, they detected that he had arrhythmia in his heart. So he had to stop flying. Mm-hmm. And then understood that he also had an aortic aneurysm that was lying underneath everything else. And so he actually ended up having stents put in when he was 83 to help solve the aortic aneurysm issue. Died a year later. Sadly, but that was awful. And then my uncle, his brother, had the same. He actually had open heart surgery when it was the only thing to do in the 90s, I believe, early 2000s. So I've always been acutely aware of my heart. I actually get baseline tests done every year because the genetic link is real. I'm not sure if it's on the male. I haven't done the DNA testing specifically, which is the next step I'd like to do. I would tell my brothers all the time, please get a baseline, just go get a ultrasound and get your heart tested. So yeah, I'm just acutely aware of how fragile our hearts are, our health is, and it's knowledge is power. I feel grateful that I actually know this, and that I can work with it, not against it, as I age.
Yeah. Well, that's great that you share that with us. Part of our community. We're not looking to find new members, but you're welcome to the club. So, as I said, our patient population has unique exercise restrictions. And of course, I just want to preface this that anyone listening should always follow their doctor's advice. We're not prescribing anything here. We're just discussing more about mindset. And I think how to frame this, because there are a lot of things we can't do, but certainly things we can do for good health in general and just mental, health as well. So what would you recommend knowing a little bit about our patient population? What would you recommend a mindset that they could go into this if they were going to go have a conversation with their doctor and they wanted to get started after their diagnosis, or just living long-term with our conditions?
Well, I'm glad you premised that. Please talk to your doctor. I don't pretend to be able to solve the deep medical problem that people face. Although I really, to your point about mindset, yes, you may be exercise restricted, but you're not movement restricted. I think there is an opportunity to have a conversation with your doctor about what is possible. You may not be able to go up hills, or you may not be able to, you have to live within the limits of your diagnosis. I think there's so much that rather than feeling, I can't do something, it's what can I do? And working with that and figuring out what works for you and starting where you are and using what you have, because a lot of the work I do helps empower women to think outside the box, think outside the gym, The gym is an important part of our exercise prescription. The biggest bang for our buck is actually moving more throughout our day rather than seated. We sit either side of 8 hours a day, most people on average or more.
Wow.
And being aware of how much you're sedentary versus getting the opportunity to move more, which I like to call play. The science behind it is something called non-exercise activity thermogenesis, and it's actually more impactful for your long-term health than your workout. So it's not all or nothing. It's not I exercise or I don't. There's a really beautiful middle ground that I love to help empower women find in a way that works for them and what they're ready, willing, and able to do. And it's really an important piece. If you have a mindset, never will I ever, well, it's really hard to change that.
Mm-hmm.
But if, I love the idea of being curious of what is possible and starting there.
Yeah. Well, we've had, we had Sally Gilbert, who was on our show, our first episode, and she went from being someone who's a cyclist to using an e-bike, being a hiker to walking on flat ground. So let's talk a little bit about the modifications. Like in my case, having ARVC, I can't get my heart rate up high. So I've discovered for myself, I can't do hikes up hills or walks upstairs quickly, but I could go for a long, long time on the flats, like flat ground with a podcast in my ears and walking my dog could be a couple hours to get outside. So talk about the modifications and scaling up or down.
Yeah, I would say to your point about, switching gears literally from a road bike to an e-bike or from hills to flat. Those sound like things that you guys like to do. And I think that's a really important starting point for people. What do you like to do? What is something you want to do that will bring you joy, that you could lose yourself in a podcast as you do it? You're still moving within your limits, but it's bringing you happiness and joy. I think that's really a great place to start for people. You can really go back to, in my book, I actually have some assessments to help people figure that out. And one is, what did you like to do as a kid? And with modifications, that's still available to people. In my book also, I talk to, because, physical limitations are a reality for most of the population, not necessarily heart, but mobility. There's lots of things that people come up against and still show up. One of the women I interview has MS and she's in a wheelchair, but she still likes to play. She still has a playful mindset and she still moves in a way that works for her within her limits. So those considerations are really important. Just finding the nuggets that you're like, oh, that counts. You'd be surprised what kind of movement counts towards your daily 20 minutes. There's a lot of possibility.
Talk to me a little bit about just getting started. For a lot of people in our group, it's daunting to get going. In your book, you mentioned something called BAM. Can you elaborate on that?
Yeah. So most people start at 100 and work backwards from something. If I don't do it perfectly, then I'm not going to do it. Right. Well, BAM is the bare. Can I say that here?
Yeah. Go for it.
What's your bare ass minimum? If you're at 0 and working upwards, what's the bare minimum you will commit to doing or trying? Because when you get there, say it's, I don't know, instead of all the ways I sucked at not starting from 100, where do you start and think, I totally rock that? Is it 5 minutes of, I don't know, going around the block? I can commit to 5 minutes, 2 minutes, 1 minute, like break it down. So it's A, very doable, and B, the bare ass, but you still accomplish it. And then it's like, why do things that make you feel bad when you can do things that make you feel great and feel like you actually have accomplished something?
Yeah. No, that's great advice. When I read that bare ass minimum, I laughed. It's a great thing to think about because, just squeezing in, as you say, getting up, getting moving, anything you can do, it all counts. It's all helpful.
It is. And, also a really big part of that, doing that BAM, is shaping your environment to help you. some people set out their shoes by their bed, so they have their running shoes on all day, and they know that at some point they're going to actually do something with those, or they can set a yoga mat by their desk and stretch, or while the pasta boils, they can stand on one leg, to work their balance. There's lots of little ways to inject playful movement, and it makes you feel like you're achieving something instead of nothing.
Right. Let's talk a little bit about, sticks versus carrots. So one of the things in your book you talked about was not a to-do list, but
ta-da!
What's the to-do list?
Well, a to-do list, again, is similar to your BAM, but what it really means is, a lot of people will sit on a Sunday and write the list of things they have to get done this week, or even in a day, and if you get 2 things done and you don't get the whole list done, then it's reshaping this idea that we're failing. We're not failing. We can succeed if we set ourselves up for it. So your to-do list is the one thing for sure that you can get done. Say it's emptying the garbage. I don't know, make it so simple that you can't fail. And then when you do, you go, ta-da. And then you might actually get more things done. There's lots of psychology around the one thing, or, making sure that you have the framework around you so you will succeed. And the ta-da is just part of that. Keeping it in perspective, that accomplishing one thing, especially when you're living with you're living with a situation that is different than other people. And instead of, feeling like you can't do things, this is something that you can empower yourself to be able to do. Yeah.
So those are great ideas. And one of the things I think we're just skirting around, but maybe we can talk about, is about self-identity. I shared with you in our conversation earlier about being at a sales conference, and the main speaker was a gentleman who had MS. And he said, I'm not a person with MS. I'm the healthiest person I can be who lives with MS. So he framed himself at not first identifying with his illness, but talking about the positive, what he could do and be healthy, and in addition, live with this condition. And that stuck. I heard that when I was in my 20s, when I was first diagnosed. It has stuck with me forever. We so often sometimes come to a challenge in our life with thinking, what are our limitations first? Or what is my self-identity, which is limiting, which I enter into first? Talk about maybe coming in with an open mind, with a growth mindset, with an idea of being the healthiest person you can be with a condition.
Yeah, what you have doesn't necessarily identify you. It's part of who you are. It's part of how you live. And putting it in perspective as to where that fits, do you show up saying, oh, hi, I'm Heather, I have a heart condition? No, hey, I'm Heather, I'm this, and just your heart condition is part of who you are and how you function. And I think when people get diagnosed with something, or something traumatic happens, of course, it's scary. And you think, is that all I am? There's something I do with my clients when we work one-on-one, and it's actually finding your strengths. Because when people don't know what to identify by, and a lot of people identify by their job, right? You ask someone what they do for a living. You can't go to a party without saying, so what do you do? Right. And I remember actually when we became expats and then we lived abroad, and I was facing that, and I wasn't working, it was, my identity had been something. And all of a sudden I was like, oh, well, I'm an at-home mom at the time. And I had this huge successful job, and I was working on the Olympics, and I was doing all these great things. And all of a sudden I wasn't, or all like getting a diagnosis. All of a sudden you're not what you thought. And then, reframing that. And in my case, it doesn't compare to a heart condition, but I'm just using this as an example. Actually, I work 365 days a week, 365 days a year, 7 days a week. And people are like, oh, what's that? Oh, well, I'm a mom, right? And what are the strengths that come with that? So when you're looking at your identity shift, when you're diagnosed with something, or you have to draw on your strengths that make you unique and is part of the whole puzzle. Who is you? There's a strengths test. There's lots of them online. You can go, if you don't know what your strengths are, that's okay. Not everybody does. You can go online. I can give you in the show notes what the link is to that. It's pretty cool. And all of a sudden you're like, oh, I am, organized and I'm fun and I'm, there's all these strengths that you can draw on and start understanding and identifying with your strengths, which help you show up when you're going to face adversity, because just because adversity comes doesn't mean you're not still those things.
Absolutely. I think for some of us too, our identity pre-diagnosis was as athletes.
Sure.
For some of us, quite high level athletes, and then being told to do a full stop, it's quite abrupt. It's a loss, and you're grieving, and switching your mind from performance to health, because performance is not always healthy.
Right. Well, I worked with Olympic athletes, right? I used to interview Olympic athletes for a living. And when that happened to a lot of athletes, would get hurt or they'd not make their event, the Olympics, or when adversity strikes and you have to shift to something new, it takes deep work. It takes a lot of intense self-reflection. It doesn't mean life is over. It means you have to pivot to figure out what is possible. Anything is possible. Anybody who has this heart condition knows anything is possible.
Sure.
It's how we show up and are ready, willing, and able to put the time and effort into aligning how we're showing up with where we imagine going in our future.
And I do think, I've thought about this a lot, that the traits of an elite athlete are shared with a patient who not only survives but thrives.
Yeah.
I think the will and the tenacity, perseverance,
determination
for me sometimes to walk up from my first floor to my second floor when I'm having real flare-ups with symptoms of heart failure are the same. That those motivations and that will was the same when I was in the last 500 meters of a rowing race when I was at my peak. The mind is an amazing, maybe you could expand a little bit about the power of the mind.
Well, I really do believe what you believe you will achieve. And I live that every day. I think there's a lot of power in journaling, self-reflection, in mindset around, dreaming big. Because, when we have a vision of our healthiest self or our best selves, when we do the work and again, I work with my clients on this, your destination postcard or your GPS, what is the vision of your next year? Pick one thing and start working towards that. And what your mind believes you will achieve. And that's been written by Napoleon Hill, or there's so many mindset books out there that talk about this. Even Viktor Frankl in his book. Have you read that one?
Oh, yeah.
Man's Search for Meaning. If anybody hasn't read that's listening, please pick it up. It's probably the most unbelievably beautiful book about mindset.
Yeah. Everyone needs three things: someone to love, something to do, and something to look forward to.
There you go.
Yeah. I want to go back a little bit about self-discipline, because there is you interviewed a woman who talked about self-discipline and how we can learn self-discipline in our lives, and we learned it at a young age. And what was that? This is a funny one. I think people will enjoy.
This is good. So Krista Scott Dixon, she is a mentor, a friend, and a PhD in behavior change psychology. I interviewed her in my book because she just has a great way of making everyday things so simple and funny. And this is a perfect example. Self-discipline kind of starts when we're young, when we learn not to pee our pants. We have to learn those control systems that are within our control to be able to show up with dry underwear. Let's just say, how to say, is that?
Yeah. And I think, what you're framing for us is what I've understood you to say is, we can all do something. We can all do something. No matter what stage you're at, there is something you can do. The bare ass minimum, that you need to create the environment. You need to have the mindset, and you need to reward yourself and feel good about what you could do.
Yeah. And identify as someone who actually does those things, because aligning those things with your identity and seeing it through a lens of play, something you get to do rather than what you have to do, it opens up a whole world of possibility, because play ultimately is medicine for the whole body, for the mind, for your connections to yourself, to others. And it brings a lot of joy into your day, which everybody could use more of.
Yeah, and you share with us right at the beginning, you had a near-death experience. I mean, many of us have also had that. I think we tend to, the silver lining of this is we tend to have a higher degree of awareness about our mortality, but also gratuity of like, I get to be here. I get to go outside and breathe the fresh air. Now, I may not be able to go for the run that I want to do, but I can possibly still walk outside. You know, I can be outside with my dog or, you know, my niece, or like, it's that doing what you can with what you've got.
Yeah. And what you're capable of. I mean, I only think we've tapped into a small percentage of what's possible. And, you know, giving yourself permission to be okay with figuring that out, you know, and being curious. Be curious of what's possible and understand that, you know, going forward, the magic elixir here is your mindset, and is giving yourself permission to figure it out and have some fun along the way.
Yeah. So I just have a couple more questions, but one thing we haven't touched on, which is a significant amount of our community are caregivers for others, moms and dads. You know, they've been hit hard with a diagnosis for their children. They're, you know, working flat out. They're caring for everybody. Let's talk a little bit. You and I have also been caregivers for our family members. We share that. Talk a little bit about the importance for the caregiver to get out there, to do what they can do.
I think that's a really important question, and a really powerful reframe, because caregivers, as much as the patient needs help, caregivers need help too. Play also stands for please look after yourself. I set that up intentionally in the work I do, because often our own health gets pushed to the bottom of the to-do list instead of a to-da list. And it's, you know, we're sometimes afraid to leave because of what's maybe going on. We may be limited in our ability to take care of ourselves. But having the opportunity to, even if you accomplish one thing in a day, you know, set yourself up so that you are looking after yourself first, so that you can look after the other things, because you've recharged your battery.
Mm-hmm.
And we often, especially as a caregiver, I don't think there's anything more powerful than giving yourself permission to do that every day somehow. Whenever maybe they're sleeping, maybe you can't leave the house, but you know, there's a lot of power in being able to do, like, you know, it sounds simple. And I think that's the whole point of the work I do, is keeping it simple. Does it mean you can step outside the front door and do 10 squats? Does it mean you can do push-ups on the counter while you're making your food? Does it, like, there's just ways to add. I have 150 ways to move more in my book, because sometimes we don't have the capacity to leave, but we do have the capacity to move. And when we move more, like I said, there's an energy boost for us. And it feels like, even if it's a little bit, the BAM, at least it's something, not nothing. Because without us taking care of ourselves, how can we give and take care of others?
Yeah. No, that's great. Thanks for sharing that. So just to wrap up, Jen, I really appreciate you spending time with us today. Is there any last words you want to impart and share with us about the importance of play? What are your final thoughts?
I think, well, first of all, thanks for the opportunity to have me. I think the one thing I will leave people with is, all movement matters. So why not make it fun and bring joy back into your life by moving in a way that makes sense to you, so that you can show up as the best version of yourself, whether you're a patient or you are a caregiver, and rediscover the world can be your playground. It's not just limited to the four walls. in your house or in the hospital. There is a way to find gratitude, joy, and movement out there every day, and figure out what the bare minimum you can commit to, and just start there and try that for a little bit. And if it works, great, keep doing it. If it doesn't, change it. It's okay. There's thousands of ways to insert more fun and play into your day, so you get to enjoy the one precious life we get to live.
That's great. That's awesome. So we are going to pair this episode with an episode with Dr. Bob Hamilton from Sick Kids Hospital. He's a pediatric cardiologist, electrophysiologist. He's going to talk about the current guidelines for exercise for our patient population, especially as it pertains to kids, because kids are that group that if they get diagnosed early, really worried that they're going to do too much. But then on the other hand, we don't want to create new health issues like obesity. So this is a great companion piece. I encourage our listeners to listen to both this episode and the one with Bob Hamilton. And thank you so much, Janet, for being on today. We really appreciate it. Spread the word, get this out to your group, and we'll get it out to ours. And it's been really illuminating. I've enjoyed it.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much. And I look forward to playing again soon together.
Thank you.